and you have to laugh at this, to ensure price stability and full employment. Well, if you believe that, then I have a bridge in Hudson River that I can sell you dirt cheap. Now, the question of what is money. I mean, this is an outline I put together a long time ago, like in 2005 when I was researching all this stuff, and of course I continue to research it. And I started this research in 1999, and the first book that I read was a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it is written by a man named Edward Griffin, and I highly recommend you get yourself a copy and read it, because The Creature from Jekyll Island is the Federal Reserve. Essentially, the spiritual brotherhoods, the secret brotherhoods, have had this, shall we say, plan, ongoing plan, which of course they've modified over the course of the last 400 years, because I think they started the concept of this plan and starting to put it into shape and put it into play and implement it, began around about the 15th, 16th century. And from my reading of the history of money, it is very clear to me, at least, that the brotherhoods have had a plan to take control of the world financial system since that time. And in the course of doing so, they targeted gold and silver, because I got to read you another quote here. This came from a friend of mine. Actually, these quotes I've seen before, but I got to get them out for you now because they're very important quotes. And I think the first major sort of step that they took was the formation of the central bank. And I think the first one was in Westphalia in 1647 or something like that. And basically all the central banks in the world are controlled by the secret brotherhoods through their intermediaries. And one of these banks is the Bank of Rothschild. Now, when I talk about the Federal Reserve, what happened at Jekyll Island is an actual location. It's an island. It's off the coast of Georgia, and it's a fancy kind of, high net worth resort. And the bankers had been working toward setting up a central bank in America. They'd tried before, but it had been the first one or two central banks. I mean, my history is not exactly clear about this because it's kind of moot. I mean, what's important is what's happening right now and how we got to this place. But there were two, I think, central banks before, but they were shut down by presidents who opposed the banking powers. But they succeeded the third time, and essentially what they did at Jekyll Island is that it was an anonymous meeting. In other words, all the participants went there by night. I think they took a train from New York to Jekyll Island. They all addressed each other by their first name, not their last name, so none of the porters and the waiters and so forth that served them their meals and whatnot could know who they are. And but Mr. Griffin, pieces it all together. And he wrote, this book was published in 1995. And in that book he predicted exactly what's been unfolding ever since, based on his knowledge about how the Federal Reserve operates. And it's a real eye-opener, because as I said, I read this book in 1999, and I couldn't put it down when I first read it. It was so shocking to me, because the reason I got into studying money, what it is and what the role it plays and so forth, was because I had figured, I'd kind of meditated and talked about it, to myself, what the heck is money? Maybe this is something this culture has right, has got it straight. Because they certainly don't have education straight, they don't have politics, they don't have government straight. I mean, these are all a shambles, the medical system, agribusiness, so forth, the food industry. It's just a complete shambles. And I said, well, they got to be doing something right. And well, of course, technology. I mean, the very fact that I can sit here in my room in Carson City and do this video and put that up on the internet and people worldwide can watch it, attests to the fact that, at least in the area of technology, we seem to be doing something right. But I thought, well, maybe money's the other way, where the financial system, they got that right. Well, I was shocked to find out that from my point of view of what I think the way money should be deployed and managed, they have not got that right at all. But from their point of view, and this is an important principle to keep in mind, everybody is right from their point of view. You just have to ascertain what their point of view is. So from their point of view, this money system is perfect. And I'll elaborate on that. Anyway, so they had this secret meeting on Jekyll Island in Georgia, and they formulated a plan to institute the Federal Reserve, which is unconstitutional and therefore illegal, and is actually a treasonous institute, simply because it's unconstitutional. Nevertheless, they paid off certain Congress people, and the president at the time was Woodrow Wilson, and he was actually only president in name, because he had an advisor, some character whose name I can't remember, who was a part of the banking, cartel, the worldwide banking cartel. And his Major something, I can't remember his last name, but he was the one that basically ran the presidency. And anyway, so on December the 24th, that is Christmas Eve, when most of Congress had gone home for the Christmas holidays, but they had their paid-off Congress people in session that particular evening, and they had the votes, and they voted into law the Federal Reserve Act, and Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson, signed it into law. And this is what he has to say after he'd done this. I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. Now remember, this is 1913. It's 98 years ago this coming December the 24th. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, on all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. And these are true statements. Those are actually true statements. No longer a government by the free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. Woodrow Wilson. Here's what Thomas Jefferson had to say about this whole business of central banks. A private central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army. We must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt, which of course is exactly what they've done, as I will get into. And then we talk about Mayer Ansel Rothschild, the original of the Rothschild dynasty. Give me control of a nation's currency, and I care not who makes the laws. Okay, so this Federal Reserve was, as I said, instituted in 1913, conveniently, of course, before the First World War. And I say conveniently because up until that time, the Western world was on the gold standard. And there simply wasn't enough gold to go around at the price that gold was at that time, which was around $20 an ounce, to finance a war. So they had to find a way to print up the money to be able to finance the war, the First World War. And then the First World War started in 1914. And the secret brotherhoods were behind the First World War too, which I will get into later on, after I've just done this next few episodes on the money situation. Now, essentially, for all practical purposes, what the Federal Reserve has done since its inception is to print up dollars. That's what it's really done. I mean, I'm not going to go into all the technical details because it's pretty arcane, for one thing, and it doesn't really obviate the argument I'm putting forward here, is that they actually print up the money and they put it into circulation. And of course, but in those days we did not have electronic money the way we do today, so it was all, entries. Now, as I said, it's a private corporation, and they have their investors, what are called note holders. Now, I did have a list of these note holders, but unfortunately that particular computer crashed and burned in 2000 and when was that? 2009. And when I took the hard drive in to get all the data restored, it had all been completely vaporized. So I don't have that list anymore, because I did save it on my computer at that time. But of course I was an idiot and I didn't back up my computer. So I lost it all. But I do recollect some of the names. And the Rothschild Bank was one of them. And there was, I think, Warburg and Morgan, some Italian bank, some Zion, Bank of Zion. I'm pretty sure the Bank of England was involved in there. Now, essentially, the Federal Reserve System, because this is a Federal Reserve, we have what's known as the Federal Open Market Committee, and